His name has appeared in the end credits of Doctor Who for 62 years, and yet I'm ashamed to say that I don't know anything about the man who composed the most enduring theme tune in television history. Up until making this video, I had absolutely no idea that Ron Grainer was both a child prodigy, a war veteran, and later in life even resented the fact that people only knew him for Doctor Who's theme tune. My name's Ruby, aka Hooby Jones, that's Petrol the Dalek, and you are watching Ron Grainer Examined, the genius behind the Doctor Who theme. Ronald Earl Grainer was born on the 11th of August 1922 to parents Margaret Clark and Robert Albert Grainer in Atherton, Queensland, Australia. Before his feet could even reach the pedals, the young Ron had become a child prodigy at both the piano and the violin, and his talent for the keys and strings was such that he was never ever allowed to play any games or sports that had the potential of hurting or injuring or damaging his fingers. In his teens, he went off to study at the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, before he was conscripted to fight near the outbreak of the Second World War. It was during this time in the Royal Australian Air Force that the young Grainer had a very serious brush with death that led him to being unconscious for several days with fears his leg may have to be amputated. Although he survived, this led to Ron being in and out of hospital for years for the rest of the war, before resuming his studies after the war had ended. It was during this time that Grainer met his first wife Margot, as he spent the rest of the 1940s trying to further his musical career in his homeland. It seemed though that he was sadly destined for failure at this time, with one particularly scathing review written by the Sydney Morning Herald of a performance given by Ron on the piano and Don Scott on violin saying, "By the time the programme had ended, the recital badly needed a blood transfusion." Struggling to find his niche at home, Ron Grainer in 1952 intended to travel abroad and hoped to eventually end up studying under Brazilian composer Villa-Lobos. During this time he arrived in London with the intention of staying there just 2 weeks. However, he quickly found such steady work and became in demand for his piano accompaniment skills. One less than stellar gig involved a 12-month stint touring with a comedy act, which involved a routine in which Ron would be hit on the head by a falling grand piano lid before toppling into the orchestra pit every single night. Work around this time for Ron was inconsistent at best, with Grainer and Margot having to work as caretakers for a large block of London flats just to pay their rent. His luck, however, was just about to change, as one day he was asked to write the music for several television plays for the BBC, with his music making such an impression on executive producer Andrew Osborne that he was handed the first project which would launch his professional composing career. Ron's theme tune for The May Grey and incidental music proved to be a huge hit with audiences, resulting in his first record deal with Warner Brothers, as well as an Ivor Novello Award for an outstanding composition for film, TV or radio. The show ran between 1960 and 1963 and gave television viewers their first proper taster of the otherworldly haunting melodies in the mind of Ron Grainer. His output practically exploded from this point onwards, scoring themes for shows such as Steptoe and Son, Man in a Suitcase, and the theme tune for the first TV show with chef Fanny Craddock, with many of these being released as singles and soundtrack albums. Now, I know most of you will have clicked on this video because of a very important theme tune for which Ron Grainer is known, and that is the opening theme tune to the hugely popular cult science fiction classic The Prisoner from 1967. This is the theme tune that Ron Grainer is perhaps best known for, and perfectly represents the surreal world of Patrick McGoohan's quintessentially 60s dystopia. Oh, and he also did the theme tune for Doctor Who. In mid-1963, Grainer was contacted by Doctor Who's first producer, Verity Lambert, who requested that the theme tune be something akin to wet fingers on glass, and familiar yet different. Ron was given some of the graphics to go off that were to be used in the show's intro, and swanned off to a beach near his holiday home in the Algarve and wrote the Doctor Who theme tune on a sheet of A4 manuscript paper, with instructions for orchestration including wind clouds, sweeps, and bubbles at appropriate moments during the tune. Just a personal observation here with no references to back it up, but I can imagine Ron laying on the beach and the crashing waves and the constant sounds and movement of the sea actually inspiring the creation of the tune, as these sounds are possibly what he wanted to hear when he was writing the instructions for sweeps and bubbles on the sheet music. The finished score was then handed over to Delia Derbyshire at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, who took the notes Ron Grainer had written and, using a variety of techniques and blending so many different avant-garde sounds, samples recorded and spliced together on tape, and using homemade electronic equipment, created the version of the theme tune we know and love today. Derbyshire later said in an interview about the work, "It was a magic experience, because I couldn't see from the music how it was going to sound. It was Ron's brilliant oral imagination." The finished Delia Derbyshire creation, which still sounds just as haunting and futuristic as it did back in '63, absolutely blew Ron Grainer away, who said to Delia, "Did I really write this?" To which she replied, "Most of it." One of the great tragedies though of this theme tune is that Ron Grainer wished for Delia Derbyshire to also receive an on-screen credit for her work on the piece, as well as splitting the tune's royalties. But the BBC policy at the time prevented it. And whilst future arrangers of the theme tune, such as Peter Howell and Dominic Glynn, enjoyed having their name in the end credits, Derbyshire's name wasn't added till Doctor Who's end credits until the arrival of Chris Chibnall in 2018. And you know what? Great job there, Chris. You righted a great historical wrong there, my friend. Being the ultimate working musician, Doctor Who was just another day at the office for Ron Grainer, and he was straight back at work creating more memorable and iconic tunes for both film and television. He also married his second wife Jennifer Grainer in August of 1966, before moving to Portugal permanently in 1968. One of the reasons for the move, aside from Grainer's hatred of London traffic jams, was the deterioration of his eyesight, and the brighter natural light of Portugal reduced his reliance on artificial light and did his health in that regard the world of good. Though he remained busy on a variety of film and TV scores through the late 60s and early 70s, work sadly began to dry up through no fault of Grainer's, but because Portugal's primitive phone network at the time made him incredibly difficult to contact and get hold of. This, as well as the political climate of Portugal at the time, meant that he returned to the UK in the mid-1970s. He then spent the rest of the decade scoring more work for TV and film, and even attended a convention for the Prisoner Society in 1978. As the programme's success continued to build during his lifetime, although undoubtedly proud of his work on the show, Ron Grainer often indicated that he was a tad annoyed that 99% of people knew him only for Doctor Who's theme tune, which is understandable considering his huge body of work and output around this time. Although he was creatively thriving going into the late 70s and early 1980s, his health however was sadly on the decline, and in early February 1981 he was admitted to Cuckfield Hospital in Sussex with spinal cancer, and sadly passed away on February the 21st, 1981 at the young age of 58 years old. Though he died unfairly at the height of his creative prowess, Ron Grainer's distinct talent for melody and harmony continues to live on in the hearts and minds of television audiences and science fiction aficionados like myself to this very day. I mean, every time something like Star Trek has had a new series made, there's a new distinct theme tune for it with a different melody. But the fact that Doctor Who has retained the exact same melody, the same bass line, and pretty much the same arrangement since the 23rd of November 1963 just goes to show how talented Ron Grainer was and how much of a genius he was when it came to coming up with a timeless and a catchy melody. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to support an independent queer Doctor Who creator, the channel also has a Patreon, and any support on that platform would be so appreciated, as I have huge plans for Whoby Jones going forward. The link for this can be found in the description. If you want to hear more, there are some fantastic playlists of Ron Grainer's scores and work here on YouTube. I'd highly recommend checking out his theme tune for The Prisoner and the opening for that show if you haven't heard it already, as well as the score for his 1971 film The Omega Man with Charlton Heston. That's a really great piece of music. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to click below to like and subscribe to the official Whoby Jones YouTube channel.